You're listening to the Trade Show Insights Podcast, Season 19, Episode 2. I'm your host and exhibit marketing strategist, Marlis Arnold, bringing you tools to improve your exhibit results. On today's episode, brought to you by the Exhibit Marketers Cafe, we're diving into a number of hot topics in the trade show world, including some things that you may not be talking about, but should be on your radar. Well, I am so excited about my guest today. This is going to be a different kind of interview. Rich Vallister is actually one of my best friends in the trade show world, but I've never had him as a guest on the podcast. So I'm really excited to have him here today. We go way back, probably about 10 years ago. We met first on Expo Chat.
Yeah,
back in the day. For those of you that aren't familiar, Expo Chat was a weekly Twitter chat for exhibit industry professionals for many, many years. And so I first met Rich there. We both at one point were moderators for the Expo Chat. We kind of several years ago started having, I guess, probably about quarterly calls where he and I would just kind of riff on all the issues going on in the industry and talking about what's happening and what should be happening and what wasn't happening. And so I decided I should ask him to be a part of this podcast. He also, by the way, he was the one who wrote the foreword for the new edition of Build a Better Trade Show Image. So, we've collaborated on a lot of different things over the years, but for those of you who don't know Rich, he's actually the Director of Marketing, Industry Relations, and Event Experiences for A to Z Events Personify. And he also serves on the CEIR, Center for Exhibition Industry Research Council. He's an IAEE CEM faculty member. And some of you may know him best as just the trade show wonk. So, Rich, welcome to Trade Show Insights.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to be here. And again, I enjoy our quarterly, if not more frequently, conversations. And so it is nice to be here and looking forward to talking about this with your audience.
Well, and the thing is, Rich, like we were just talking before, you and I could go on for hours. So we're going to try to keep this to 20 to 30 minutes. But this is going to be kind of an opportunity for people to kind of listen get inside our heads and hear what it is that we talk about on a semi-regular basis. So I want to just start off with, of course, couple of the big elephants in the room. Everybody's dealing with staffing challenges and budget challenges these days. And, I just was on a conversation earlier today where somebody just summed it up and he said, we are as busy or busier than we were in 2019, but we're doing it with less staff. And I think that's the challenge that so many people in this industry are dealing with. It's like, we're just crazy busy running in circles, yet we don't have the staff to handle it. So what are you hearing? Any insights on that?
Yeah, I think the challenge that we're seeing is, like you said, it's sort of systemic across the events industry. And I think as event organizers and like ourselves in the business need to educate most likely our exhibitors and sponsors because they don't live in that ecosystem. They may be surprised to learn how short staffed we are. I mean, it's not really an excuse, but I think it's, important for us to think about trying to communicate that with them that like, hey, things may take longer or things may be more expensive because of these staffing shortages. I think we hear it in other industries, but we're not on the nightly news talking about these shorting staffages, our industry. So that would be my first tip is trying to educate those who are coming to your events with the expectation that, there will be challenges, and that may even hold true to your venues or the hotels that they're staying at.
That's true. Yeah, because it touches so many different parts. I mean, if the hotels are understaffed or like you said, if there's not enough show labor to set up their booths in a timely fashion, or there's all these different layers of complexity. And I know because I've been consulting with a lot of exhibitors lately, and a lot of them are they're either new to trade shows in general, or they're at a new company or whatever, and they really don't understand all of these things. People, I think sometimes we kind of trained people to be able to do things last minute, and we would pull the rabbit out of the hat, and that just can't happen anymore.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, luckily it seems like we've worked most of the kinks through supply chain, and but in general, you're right, things take a little longer, and I think a lot of exhibitors, especially first time exhibitors, or even some of the bigger exhibitors that have grown accustomed to, well, I'll just pay a little money, or we can always overnight it, or we can always do these things, and it'll all work out, and you need to be a little more ready for a longer timeline or more bumps in the road, and so you're not surprised by those.
That's true. That's true. Well, and on the subject of the dealing with the new exhibitors, or those that maybe aren't familiar with the industry, I know that's one of the things I've been talking with show organizers about, is how can you make the whole process easier for the first timers, or especially those, little guys in the 10 by 10s. Just because they're taking only a 10 by 10 space this year doesn't mean that like 5 years from now, they might not have a 20 by 30 island, because their company is just booming and they're doing great and they've had great results at your show and they want to keep coming back. But what are some of the things that you've seen shows doing that really key in on either the little guys or the newbies, and what are they doing to kind of help them get acclimated, or really become a part and really feel like they're part of the overall show?
I mean, it's so key to, I mean, we joke about education, and obviously that's what you do so well, with the organizations and associations that you work with, is educating those exhibitors. But a lot of it also comes down to, packaging up, making it easy. You know, let's put carpet in every booth for them and build it into the cost, because they might be surprised that carpet's not included, or
Oh, yes,
I'm
a lot of them are very surprised to hear that.
and then of course the bad experience is when they're on show site and you've put the slip in their booth and say, "Oh, you've got to buy carpet at twice the price and at
And
twice the
by the
labor."
way, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sorry you didn't read our 90-page exhibit manual. So the more that we can help educate, but more in bundle and conceptually throw in things to say, like, exhibitor education and training and marketing tools, because we forget. I mean, I always tell the story, and this is ages ago. I remember my first show as a 10 by 10, and I did the carpet thing. I was like, I looked at, I mean, I did read the manual slightly, and I was like, carpet's expensive. Yeah, we'll skip carpet. I mean, we did those things. I mean, and then we showed up and we learned the hard way. But no one sat with us. And I mean, we joke about staffing shortages, and everyone probably listening to this podcast is saying, what do you mean I have to hold my exhibitors even more? But think about these groups that are new. And I will say, I think you bring up a great point. Many times the bigger exhibitors have done it so much, they've even lost track of how to be successful at a show, because they just assume we've done it this way forever.
They're on autopilot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've done it. So the more we can think about making it easy, I mean, Staples was genius with their easy button, but that's what most of these exhibitors want to do. And then you look at, I mean, you talk to a lot of those 10 by 10s too, and sometimes that's the CMO, the CFO, the CEO, the COO, and while they're at that show, that's their whole business in one fell swoop, and they may not be accustomed to what we deal with in the trade show business.
Yeah. Yeah. And most of those smaller exhibitors aren't. And a lot of them are taking like a huge leap, even especially if it's a major national or international show. They're taking a huge leap of faith, committing however many thousands of dollars to be there in the first place. But then they don't realize that, they not only have the cost of renting the space, getting the display built, shipping it there, getting their people there, paying for their hotel, But then, like you said, they've also got the cost of the show labor. They've got the cost of getting the carpeting in the booth, or renting the furniture they want in their booth, or all those kinds of things, and they don't realize that all these other pieces are part of it. And so that's a lot of times, and it's hard for me sometimes because like you said, I've been in this industry so long, sometimes I forget what those first timers really don't know. So I think one thing that I love, and I try to get more shows to do, is to really focus on those newbies, having first timer education, doing yeah, I do webinars for exhibitors of all sizes and types. And I've taught, like you said, I've taught webinars for trainings for exhibitors for over 20 years now. But those newbies, there's very specific things that they need to know, pointing out some of those things in the exhibitor manual, giving them ideas. Half the time when I talk to exhibitors, they don't even know some of the free promotional opportunities that are available to them, just educating them on, hey, this stuff is available. One of my pet peeves is nobody ever bothers to fill out their exhibitor profile, for the app and the website and everything. And it's like, that's free. And that all it takes you is like 10 minutes to enter some information there. Why? And this is like even major. I mean, I'm working with a big show right now. I'm getting ready to go to the show, and I'm going through the app and I'm looking, and big household names didn't even bother to fill it out.
That it's just, there's autopilot. I think it's a great way to say it. But something that you just said struck me too, that because of, in this post-pandemic world, we say newbies and often think of 10 by 10s, but I can tell you, even from my personal experiences, I took over a lot of our events, 54 a year that we go to, and I was not a newbie to exhibiting. This is what I do for a living, but I was a newbie at that show.
Yes.
And so, suddenly I was at, an association show or a YMCA show, or things that just are not, I'm used to events. And suddenly these weren't in my wheelhouse. And, and I felt like I was the classic exhibitor, was like, hey, I gotta be honest, I know how to exhibit, but I have never exhibited at your show. What do I do? Where do I go? I mean, I know what to do, but you tell me from this audience. So newbies probably means more than just newbies.
That's true. There could be people that are newbies on all different kinds of levels. And, I think what you said there is so important, that reaching out and asking the show organizer, if you're listening and you are an exhibitor, reach out to your show organizer. Don't like badger them with questions, but reach out to them and just ask them, what are some of their best tips for you? What are some things that you need to make sure you don't overlook? Those kinds of things. When I was a new exhibitor, because that's my background. I started as an exhibitor. I also helped to produce some local expos in the beginning. Before I really knew that much, I didn't even know there was a trade show industry, but I was helping to produce local events. And so I learned that one of the best keys was to work as a partnership, as an exhibitor. When I would go to the show organizer and I would, reach out to them and say, hey, what else can I be doing to help promote this? They would give me suggestions. Sometimes I even had the opportunity to pick up a sponsorship that hadn't sold at a discount because they didn't have anybody else taking advantage of it, or they would give me some extra little insights or something just because I asked. And I think
that's the effort to ask.
Yeah, because they could tell that I was really wanting to be successful, and I was really wanting to have a great show, and I was really wanting to help the show itself do well. I wanted to help spread the word about the event. And I think a lot of times exhibitors don't realize that there is help available if they would just reach out and ask.
Well, and two, I think a lot of shows, by what they build in their packages or their exhibiting packages or sponsorships, is a way to sort of show exhibitors. I see a lot of times, our clients say, well, we're going to throw in a marketing tool or a list, or, we're going to throw in an upgraded listings, like, hey, in the mobile app, we're going to give you as a new exhibitor. Or, what, we're going to provide lead retrieval for you, for this first year. And I think it's creating that idea that, oh, I need to market myself because they've given me these tools. I need to do lead retrieval, which means I need to capture leads, because that's maybe how we'll, so there's shows that are trying to say, look, eventually you'll need to pay for some of these things, but as a first timer, these are the tools to make you successful. And the shows that are sort of bundling those in are at least trying to show this is the behavior we expect of you. We're giving
Yes.
you a discount or free this time. Eventually you'll become whatever. But then, we kind of graduate them along, because those are things, again, when I look at cost or things and I say, well, maybe I'm going to skip lead retrieval, or maybe I'm going to skip this thing. When in reality, some of those items I just talked about are often, bundled in for show managers, or a way to provide it
Mhm.
easily, sets the stage that as an exhibitor I need to do these things and buy these things to be successful.
Well, and I like your idea of, having some kind of a bundle for those first time exhibitors, whether they're first time ever or just first time at your show. I think showing first timers that they are appreciated, that they are valued, that you as a show organizer, you care about their success. Because you look at, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the average turnover for any show is, a percentage that I think is much higher than it should be. And that's because a lot of people come in and they don't know what they're doing. And if they don't get any education and they don't have these tools, and then they get there and they find out they've got all these last minute charges for things they didn't know about and all this stuff, and they have a horrible experience and nobody's educated them on how to do a good job capturing leads. Well, of course they're not going to come back, because they're going to be the ones complaining and going, oh, this was a big waste of money.
Yeah, you're investing in your future of that exhibitor.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I will say the shows too that, I always tell this story. I was on a plane, and I could just tell based on, the show I was going to and the person sitting next to me, I could tell they were probably going to the same trade show I was going to. And I asked the person, I said, well, oh, are you going to insert show name here? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, you too? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, so I'm curious, like, what's your strategy, when you get there? And I've never forgotten this, because I think it holds true for a lot of attendees. He's like, look, I know the big guys and gals in the big booths to start. He's like, I'll go see them eventually. He's like, I love to start on the outskirts, because that's where usually they stick the
Mm.
new people, the innovators, the people that are new in the business. He's like, that's where the cooler upcoming stuff is many times. And it really struck me, was like, his strategy was something we need to, and I know some shows are working really hard to, I was just at NRF's big show, and they had an innovation lab, and a lot of
Mhm.
people are starting to call those areas out, because oftentimes those newer exhibitors are the ones that are bringing newer things to market. Nothing against the anchors, but here's this person saying, I'm going to go to the outskirts, because that's where I'm going to probably maybe see something more interesting. And so, back again, if you're
Yeah.
not showing value to these first time exhibitors and telling attendees, you're going to want to go see these, because they're the newest products, the newest companies. We know that's why people attend shows, is to see new products and
Yeah,
services
exactly.
often.
That's always
So
one of the number one answers that attendees say. They're going to see what's new, and highlighting, or like you said, segmenting off those new exhibitors. Because let's face it, every company was a first time exhibitor at some point. I mean, you never know what little 10 by 10 is going to be, your future household brand name advertising during the big game for $7 million or whatever. So I mean, yeah, it's like your show is a greenhouse, and you're nurturing all those little baby plants to grow up and become something big.
that is so true, and I've been with so many shows for so long. It is amazing, like you said, these companies that you meet them, and they're hemming and hawing over a corner booth in the back of the hall, and now are the 40 by 40 up front, or like, and there
Yeah.
again the investment starts to pay off.
Yeah. Well, so let's kind of flip that a little bit. So we talked a lot about how to help out the new guys, the first timers, and helping them get their sea legs, I guess you could say. But on the flip side, rewarding loyalty is so important. You don't want to take those long time, they've been here every year for 40 years exhibitors for granted either. So,
It amazes me. We are now in a reward loyalty culture. I mean, I look at my phone, and most of them are apps to somewhere to scan. I mean, it's by
yeah.
habit now. We go to the checkout, and they're going to scan the QR code because we want to earn points, whether it's food or clothing, or, because again, retailers have pioneered this to realize that, one, it's great data. Two, you're collecting information, but more importantly, that loyalty pays off. The
Yep.
free sandwich, the whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
we don't do any of that in trade shows. We just pretty much assume they're just going to keep coming back.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, you think about it, and I, I think it's also that gamification and that little bit of competition too. Because, like for me, it is like a game. It's like, ooh, where can I go? What can I get? Oh, let's see, I can get a free sandwich here, or I can go get half price entree at this restaurant or whatever. And so I'm like strategizing, oh, where am I going to go based on where my loyalty points going to take me the furthest. And, same thing with hotels, airlines, ordering things at Staples or Target, I mean, we do it everywhere. So have you seen any shows that have started to implement any kind of loyalty points like this?
I mean, obviously there's, priority points.
Well, yeah, but that's a little
Yeah, I
different.
agree. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've really seen across our clients any sort of loyalty, program. I mean, if anything, and this is not really a reward, is, the ribbons on the badges that say they've been 5 years, but no, nothing really strategic around.
Or
um,
tangible or
no, nothing tangible now that I can see of, so it's green space or white space or whatever you call it, where,
yeah,
shows could start to think of, and whether it's exhibitors, even attendees, what are you doing for that attendee that's come
exactly.
10 years?
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I will also say though, I think on the, to dabble in the priority points concept, I will say one shift I'm seeing though in exhibitors loyalty there is, because we have these up and coming companies, I've worked with shows that are over 100 years old, and you're never going to catch up to some of those exhibitors that have been there for 100 years. Because if you have a continually building priority point process,
Yeah.
new company is never going to catch up to the company that's been
No, no,
impossible.
that window has closed.
Yeah, it's mathematically impossible. So I will say some shows are saying we're going to look at a 5-year, rolling total,
Mm,
because
that
there
makes
again,
sense.
some companies may spend a lot during certain years, but then they can ride those priority points. So I will encourage
Well, it
more
levels
just
the playing field a lot more that way.
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than loyalty, no. I mean, gosh, there's just so many opportunities to.
I have a feeling that's a future conversation for one of our brainstorming days, Rich.
Yeah, like what are the, but it would be, and again, I look at you said it. It is amazing what we'll do at this point to go somewhere that we've got some points, or that, oh, your $1.20 in points is going to expire, and then you go spend $100 because your $1.20 is going to expire. But then,
Exactly.
yeah, all those people coming to your event or your trade show, your conference, have used points everywhere. That's why they're picking the hotel, like you said. But
Right?
then they get to our show and there's nothing rewarded.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you
Right.
said, I
There's a
think
whole
that
topic on that.
yeah, there's a whole other topic there, and there's a whole for everybody listening. Start putting your thinking caps on and be the innovator for this, because
Yeah.
it is like you said, it's wide open right now. Nobody's really, I mean, I think I've heard of a few like small things, like maybe they have something like for exhibitors or attendees who've been there for 5 years or 10 years or something. They'll have like a VIP lounge or some special feature maybe for them, but
Yeah, or a
not.
sticker on the show floor or something, but
Yeah, nothing like really, no really like structured system or way to incentivize people to keep coming back, because hey, the more often you come. I do like how some, and I don't know it's so much for trade shows, but I've heard of it sometimes in like just conferences or meetings where they refer to people who've been there before as alumni. And I
yeah.
like that concept of, thinking about how do obviously as an alumni of a school, you go back for reunions and they have all kinds of, special activities and things and, incentivizing people to come for those. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of potential we can learn from other aspects of popular culture. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit because I know a couple of things we really wanted to talk about. One, I know you said, and we're not going to have time to delve into in depth, but you were saying it's the one hot topic that everybody should be talking about, but nobody's really thinking about. Tell us what that is, Rich.
Sustainability.
Yeah.
I feel like it's, you know, everyone has a page on their event site that talks about the importance of it. Everyone says, it's a top priority, whether you're an association, independent show organizer. But then what I find is, I mean, even in our industry events that we go to, we talk about, hey, as an industry, we need to be more sustainable. And the first reception you go to is single-use plastic everywhere. And, so there's that disconnect where
Mixed messages.
and some of that probably, I mean, I may be, a little off on this, but sustainability, there's some investment in that, and when you go to, and I think a lot of the shows are looking at cost, is a bamboo plate more expensive than a plastic one? One is obviously, much more sustainable, but when you look at 10,000 bamboo plates compared to 10,000 plastic, I think a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, and that's
well,
what
we're sustainable except for this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, people could buy carbon offsets in our registration process, or we're sort of doing these sort of placating items, but I don't think we're partnering enough with all the areas and venues and really saying that, no, it's really important, or budgeting if there are budgetary differences in that. And I mean, that this is an investment that sounds good, but I am not seeing it to the level of which we're talking about it. I'll say that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of talk, not a lot of do.
Yeah. And as we all want to attract younger and younger audiences, at some point that will come to head with audiences that are like, wait a minute.
Well, and companies, the exhibiting companies who are starting to have more sustainable initiatives within their own company, they're going to start to take a look at which shows are the most in line with their values too. So,
well, and that's a great point, because there are even companies that are looking at, what is the carbon footprint of their teams going to trade shows and events, or, and I think we have to also, as organizers, say, yeah, but the beauty of these events are we're bringing all these people in one place. If you were to say, let's send your sales team to these places, look at your carbon footprint to coming to our event where you're seeing those and more. So that's, I think, a balance. But yeah, no, you're right. Companies are going to start to evaluate those things, especially as, audiences are more aware of it, and they're going to make bigger judgments about your commitment to it.
True. Well, one last thing. I know, again, we could do a whole episode just on this, but the big elephant in the room these days is AI. Everybody's talking about AI. And again, I think it's a little bit like sustainability. Everybody's talking about it. It's like the big buzzword, but it's like nobody really knows what to do with it. And I know you just did a video, and we'll have a link for that in the show notes, about the whole idea of how to really start to make AI fit into your trade show strategy and planning. So you want to give us a few tips on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, like you said, and I've been to a lot of webinars and websites, and everybody talks about, oh, you could use it for this, but then there's never that actionable items, like how to use it. And, so I started with, because I'm like a lot of people, like, oh, it's interesting. You start playing around, and what I realized that a lot of this starts with prompts, which is like really a fancy word for like asking AI to do it. And so there's some real like prompt engineering. I mean, that's probably, if I could, go back, now that's probably like the new college degree will be things like prompt engineering.
Exactly.
But, it's really just a fancy way to ask AI better questions. And it's amazing when you learn, things like the phrase act as if you're a director, act as if you're a student, and you start telling AI to think like these things, which gets a little scary at points, but it's those prompts that build better, results.
Well, and I just did this for my client show that I've got coming up. I decided to see if I could get AI to come up with some good opening lines for exhibitors to use in their booth. So I started out, and like you said, it's all in how you write that prompt. I started out kind of general and said, brainstorm this, and it came back, and it's like, it sounded so, I mean, it sounded like used car salesman. I mean, it was like, really pitchy, and just like, or like a huckster at the carnival. It's like, come play and win a giant teddy bear, and it's like, no, this is not working. So I really started to drill down, and I would say by about the fourth round, I got some really good questions. I had it asking, give me some opening questions to start a conversation. And it was giving me these really good, obviously they'd have to be fine tuned for the individual exhibitor, but they were giving me, just in general, they were giving me some good ideas for, whether they sold tools, or they sold software, or they sold, all different kinds of things. It gave some different ones. And I'm like, wow, I'm like, I'm going to have to play around with this some more, because I could see where that could really, starting to give people some good basis for thought, because you don't want to necessarily just take it all 100% what AI gives you and use it that way, but it gives you a good starting point of where to think, what direction to go.
Yeah, that's I like to think of it, AI as sort of like this kind of co-pilot, or something that is like, they're not there to fly the plane, they're there to co-pilot, and they're there to give it guidance. And the more we get comfortable with it, and I've really started in my mind think of, there's easier things to do, and then there's more advanced things to do. And so if people start to just dabble in the easy, and then get to the more advanced. I mean, I think some of the data analysis that I've been toying around with, every time I do a pivot table, I have to go and YouTube it. Like, okay, I'm gonna do a pivot table. But with things like AI, you're like, hey, take this data sheet and give me, this type of thing, and it's doing it at a speed of which
the analysis,
as humans, but even that, like, what's the tool, what's the thing, and then obviously for a lot of associations, organizations, what's the data you're putting up there. I mean, I think everyone gets caught up in the, like, there's some privacy, there's things like that, but I think I wouldn't let that prevent you from starting, like you said, from brainstorming to moving things. But yeah, it's amazing. I sort of started this, and I said, it's like those things when we conversationally ask questions, but then we get on the keyboard and we ask these sort of whatever. But with AI, the more context and the more you spell out, or the better it's going to get, and the more data, and over time, it's amazing. But it's hard. I get it. Like, don't feel bad. I think most people listening to this podcast are probably like every other event professional. They're kind of, or exhibitor, they're kind of thinking about it. They're kind of trying it, or they've only heard of Chat GPT. And there's so much more out there, but even if you just start, it's just starting. But so I think that's the thing. The more, we can provide people those, like, here's an actionable thing to go try, the better they'll get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at this point, we're all experimenting. I mean, there's very few really pros in the AI world at this point. We're all still learning how to use it. So I think, just like you said, just get out there and, maybe jump in the deep end, but definitely start wading into the shallow end and start exploring. So Rich, thank you so much. This is always so much fun to brainstorm and kick ideas around and just riff off things with you. So thank you for doing it in the more public fashion here on Trade Show Insights this time.
Well, thanks for having me, and look forward to us continuing our collaboration and conversation.
Yes. And for those of you listening, just keep an eye out, because you never know what Rich and I might be coming up with next. So we definitely follow both of us. Rich, you're always on LinkedIn. You post a lot of great things on there. So follow Rich on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, and we'll have more great things coming up soon, I'm sure. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like more, you can subscribe to the Trade Show Insights podcast and automatically receive future episodes on your chosen device. Simply search for Trade Show Insights in Apple, Spotify, or virtually anywhere else that podcasts are found, then click the subscribe button. Trade Show Insights is protected by the Creative Commons copyright license. You may feel free to share this recording with colleagues or embed it on your own blog, as long as it's shared in its entirety and is not used for commercial purposes. To learn more, please see the link in the sidebar of the show notes at tradeshowinsights.com. Well, that's it for this episode of Trade Show Insights. Be sure to check out our show notes and archives at tradeshowinsights.com. You can also connect with me using the social media links or the contact page on the site. I'm Marlis Arnold. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time for more tools to improve your exhibit results.